A single dad said to a lonely CEO, "Pretend to be my wife for a year." She said, "So we're sharing a bed." 3 months later, his 7-year-old daughter sat ringside at a charity gala, watching her father step into a boxing ring. She didn't know he used to be a champion. She didn't know that the scars on his knuckles had names and stories. She just knew that the man across from him, the one in the expensive trunks with the cruel smile, had called her daddy a gold digger at dinner. And she'd asked him not to let the bad people win. So he put on. The ballroom was too bright, too loud, filled with people who'd never had to choose between pride and a medical bill. The CEO sat in the VIP section, perfectly still, watching the arrangement she'd designed for Control Spiral into something she couldn't predict. The single father's hands were shaking as the referee gave instructions, not from nerves, from memory. 8 years since he'd stood in a ring. 8 years since his wife died and his daughter's damaged heart became the only thing that mattered. 8 years of making himself invisible so she could survive. First round, he took punches he should have slipped, moved like a man who'd forgotten his body used to be a weapon. The crowd was already writing him off, just another desperate man who'd married up and was about to pay for it. Then his daughter's voice cut through the noise. "Come on, Daddy." Not loud, not dramatic, just belief. And he remembered why he'd walked away from millions, why he'd changed his name, why he'd spent 8 years washing dishes instead of wearing gold. Because some things matter more than being seen. Second round, 3 punches. Surgical. The hedge fund manager hit the canvas and the room went silent. An old journalist in the front row recognized the efficiency, the control. He pulled up footage on his phone, compared the movement, and his hands started trembling. He whispered to the woman beside him, "That's the silence. He's been gone for 8 years." The CEO's fake husband wasn't a dishwasher at all. He was a ghost. And ghosts don't stay buried when their daughters need them. If you believe that love can make you disappear and courage can bring you back, stay with this story. Because what happens next will prove that the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who rebuild themselves in the dark. One shift at a time, for someone who'll never know the cost. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, what would you sacrifice to save the person you love most? But to understand how a champion became invisible, and how a 7-year-old girl with a failing heart gave him permission to be seen again, we need to go back 3 months. To a restaurant kitchen, to a woman who mistook humility for weakness, to the night a single father made the most dangerous proposal of his life. 3 months earlier, Giordano's restaurant smelled like garlic and disappointment. The dinner rush had ended an hour ago. Luca Moretti stood at the industrial sink in the back kitchen, hands deep in scalding water, scrubbing marinara off plates that had seen better decades. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed and flickered. His lower back ached from the double shift, but he didn't stop. He never stopped early. At the corner table near the walk-in freezer, Sophia sat with her math homework spread across the scarred laminate surface. She was 7 years old and small for her age. Dark curls fell across her forehead as she bent over her worksheet. Her purple medical alert bracelet caught the light when she moved her pencil. She'd decorated it with star stickers earlier that week. "Daddy, what's 7 times 8? Luca didn't look up from the sink. "What do you think it is?" She chewed her bottom lip. 56? "That's right. But I want to make sure." "You already know," he said quietly. "Trust yourself." The kitchen was warm and loud, with the hum of ancient refrigeration units. Tony, the owner, didn't mind Sophia being there on weeknights. Luca worked every shift Tony needed covered and never asked for time off. A kid doing homework in the corner was a small price to pay for reliability. Sophia looked up from her worksheet. "We have my doctor thing on Friday." Luca's hands stilled for half a second in the water. Yeah. Is it just the regular checkup? Just routine, he said. His voice stayed level. Dr. Patel wants to see how you're doing. The lie sat heavy in his chest. The appointment wasn't routine. Dr. Patel had called 3 days ago to say Sophia's last tests showed changes they needed to discuss in person. But Sophia didn't need to carry that weight. Not yet. The kitchen door swung open hard enough to bang against the wall. Marco, one of the waiters, looked frazzled. Luca, there's a lady at the bar. Wants something off menu. Chef says no way. Kitchen's closing. Luca pulled his hands from the water. What'd she order? Some salad with specific greens and a dressing we don't have. She's not happy. Tony appeared in the doorway behind Marco, already shaking his head. Tell her we can't do it. Kitchen's done. Marco disappeared back through the door. Luca returned to the dishes. He had 45 more plates to get through before he could take Sophia home. She had school in the morning and he had the opening shift. 30 seconds later, the kitchen door slammed open again. The woman who walked in wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Luca made in 3 months. She was younger than him, sharp-featured, with the kind of posture that came from expensive private schools. Her heels clicked on the tile floor. Which one of you is refusing to make my food? Tony stepped forward, hands raised in appeasement. Ma'am, the kitchen is closed. We can offer you anything on the menu that doesn't require prep, but I don't want what's on the menu. Her voice was cold and precise. I want what I ordered. It's not complicated. Luca kept washing dishes. He'd learned a long time ago that the best way to handle angry customers was to be invisible. The woman's eyes found him at the sink. Are you the cook? Dishwasher, Luca said without turning around. Kitchen's closed, ma'am. She took 3 steps closer. Luca could smell her perfume now, something expensive and severe. Do you understand who I am? He didn't answer. I just came from a board meeting where I had to fire 16 people. I haven't eaten in 9 hours. I'm asking for a salad. Are you really going to tell me no? Luca dried his hands on his apron and finally looked at her. The cook's gone home. I don't know how to make what you want. Her expression shifted into something harder. What's your name? Luca. Luca what? He hesitated. She looked him up and down, taking in the stained apron, the accent that still carried a trace of the neighborhood where he'd grown up, the brown skin and dark hair. Her eyes narrowed. Where are you from, Luca Moretti? Chicago. Before that? My parents were from Calabria. I was born here. Do you have your papers? The question landed like a slap. Tony went very still. Even Marco, hovering near the door, looked uncomfortable. Luca's jaw tightened. Then you should be grateful you're allowed to work here at all. Because I can make one call to immigration services and another to the health department, and this place will be crawling with inspectors by morning. From the corner table, Sophia's small voice cut through the tension. You're mean. The woman turned. She seemed to notice the child for the first time. Sophia stood up from her chair. She was holding her plastic cup of water. You're being mean to my daddy. Sit down, Luca said quietly. But she... Sit down. Sophia didn't sit. She was 7. But the water hit the woman's blouse and dripped down onto her skirt. The kitchen went silent except for the hum of the freezers. The woman looked down at herself, then back at Sophia, then at Luca. Her face went white with rage. Did you see that? Your child just assaulted me. She's 7, Luca said. I don't care if she's 7 or 70. That's assault. I will sue you for everything you have. That's assault. I will sue you for everything you have. Tony stepped between them, his voice shaking. Ma'am, please, I'm so sorry. Luca stared at him. What? You're fired. Take your kid and go. Tony, I can't have this. I'm sorry. Tony wouldn't meet his eyes. She's right. You brought your kid into a workplace. Something like this happens, I'm liable. The woman pulled a business card from her purse and dropped it on the stainless steel prep counter. If you want to negotiate how much this is going to cost you, call my office. She walked out. The door swung shut behind her. Luca stood there, apron still damp from the sink, his daughter's hand now gripping his. Sophia was shaking. She didn't cry. She almost never cried. But her breathing had gone shallow. Tony picked up the business card and held it out. Luca, I'm sorry. I really am. Luca took the card. He didn't look at it. He took off his apron, folded it, and set it on the counter. Come on, Soph. They walked out through the back door into the alley where the dumpsters sat. The November air was cold and smelled like wet pavement. Luca pulled Sophia's coat tighter around her shoulders and took her hand. They walked 3 blocks to the bus stop in silence. Sophia finally spoke when they sat down on the bench. I'm sorry, Daddy. It's okay. I got you fired. No, you didn't. Luca looked down at her. Her eyes were glassy, but she was holding it together. 7 years old and already trying to carry weight that wasn't hers to carry. She was wrong, Luca said quietly. What she said was wrong. You were right to be angry. But now you don't have a job. He put his arm around her and pulled her close. The bus shelter was cold and smelled like old cigarette smoke. I'll find another one. What if you can't? I will. The bus came 18 minutes later. They sat near the back. Sophia rested her head against his shoulder and fell asleep. Luca looked out the window at the passing city. In his pocket, the business card felt like a lit match. He pulled it out and read it under the dim bus light. Vanessa Klein, Chief Executive Officer, Summit Growth Partners. He turned it over. On the back, she'd written in sharp, precise handwriting, "Call my office if you want to negotiate the lawsuit." Luca stared at those words for a long time. Then he slid the card back into his wallet, leaned his head against the cold glass, and tried not to think about the appointment on Friday. 2 days later, the school called at 11:47 a.m. Luca was at a job site 3 miles away, clearing debris from a construction company's morning demo work. It was cash under the table, $40 for 4 hours of hauling broken drywall and splintered wood. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The nurse's voice was calm but fast. Mr. Moretti, Sophia had an episode during recess. We've called an ambulance. They're taking her to Northwestern Memorial. He was in his truck before she finished the sentence. The hospital's emergency entrance. Luca found Sophia in a curtained bay, small against the white sheets, an oxygen monitor clipped to her finger. Her eyes were closed, but she was breathing. A nurse adjusted her IV line. She's stable, the nurse said. Doctor will be in soon. Luca sat in the plastic chair beside the bed and took Sophia's hand. Her fingers were cold. The purple medical alert bracelet sat loose around her thin wrist. Her eyes opened. Daddy? I'm here. I got dizzy. I know, baby. You're okay now. I fell down and... Not Dr. Patel, someone younger, with tired eyes and the tablet in her hands. She said they were admitting Sophia for monitoring. Her heart rhythm was irregular. Dr. Patel would be in tomorrow to discuss next steps. They moved Sophia to a room on the 4th floor. It had a window that looked out at another wing of the hospital. The walls were pale yellow. Someone had put up stickers of cartoon animals near the ceiling, but half of them were peeling off. Sophia fell asleep around 3 in the afternoon. Luca sat in the vinyl chair that converted into a bed and watched. Patel arrived the next morning during breakfast. Sophia was eating applesauce and watching cartoons on the wall-mounted TV. Dr. Patel was a small woman in her 50s, with graying hair and the kind of steady voice that made bad news sound like facts instead of tragedy. She sat down and pulled up Sophia's chart on her tablet. Her heart function is declining faster than we expected, Dr. Patel said. We need to move her up the transplant list, but that requires a full cardiac evaluation. It's comprehensive imaging, stress tests, genetic screening, the works. Luca nodded. What does $47,000? Insurance classifies it as elective staging, so it's out of pocket. The number hit him like a fist to the chest. He kept his face still. What happens if we don't do it? She stays where she is on the list, which is bottom tier. If her heart continues to decline at this rate, she won't qualify for transplant at all. She'll be too sick. Sophia looked up from her applesauce. What are you talking about? Dr. Patel smiled at her. Just boring doctor stuff. You keep eating. How long do I have to decide? We should move on this within the next 2 weeks. Dr. Patel left. A hospital social worker came in an hour later. A woman in her 30s with a kind face and a folder full of pamphlets. She talked about crowdfunding platforms and payment plans. 6 years at $900 a month if his credit qualified. Luca had $1,600 in his savings account. He thanked her and said he'd think about it. That night, Sophia fell asleep at 8. The hospital room was quiet except for the beep of the heart monitor and the hum of the ventilation system. Luca sat in the chair that didn't recline far enough to be comfortable and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through job listings for an hour. Nothing paid enough. Nothing paid fast enough. Then he switched to news. The article was on a business site he didn't normally read. The headline said, Summit Growth Partners CEO under fire after hostile takeover backlash. He almost scrolled past it. Then he saw the name. Vanessa Klein. He clicked. The article said Summit Growth Partners had orchestrated a hostile takeover of a family-owned manufacturer. Employees lost jobs. The family lost everything. Public sentiment turned against the firm and its CEO. The board was pressuring Klein to repair the company's image. Unnamed sources said she'd been given an ultimatum: soften her public persona, settle down, get married, or step aside. The article included a photo of her at some gala, standing alone in a black dress, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Luca read the article twice. Then he read it again. His hand went to his wallet. He pulled out the business card she'd left at Giordano's. It was bent at one corner, slightly stained from 2 days in his pocket. Vanessa Klein, Chief Executive Officer. Summit Growth Partners. On the back, in her sharp handwriting, call my office if you want to negotiate the lawsuit. He stared at that line for a long time. She needed a husband. He needed $47,000. The idea was insane. Impossible. The kind of thing desperate people thought about and then dismissed because it could never actually work. But Luca had learned a long time ago that impossible just meant expensive, and she had money. She was curled on her side, one hand tucked under her pillow. The hospital gown was too big for her. The IV line taped to her arm looked like something that belonged on someone much older. She was 7 years old and her heart was failing. Luca put the business card back in his wallet. Then he opened his phone's notes app and started writing. The tie was crooked, but he didn't fix it. Summit Growth Partners occupied floors 18 through 22 of a glass tower on Michigan Avenue. The lobby had marble floors and a fountain that looked like it cost more than Luca would make in 10 years. A security guard asked for his ID at the desk. I'm here to see Vanessa Klein. Do you have an appointment? No. Then you can't go up. Luca walked past him to the elevator bank. The guard called after him but didn't follow. The elevator required a key card. Luca took the stairs. The 18th floor had a reception. The woman sitting there was young, professional, and already looking at him like he was lost. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Vanessa Klein." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have information about her image problem." The receptionist's expression didn't change. "Ms. Klein doesn't take walk-in meetings. If you'd like to leave a message." "I'll wait." "Sir, that's not—" "I'll wait." He sat down in one of the leather chairs by the window. The receptionist made a phone call, spoke quietly, then hung up and ignored him. Luca waited. Women in heels that clicked on the polished floor. No one looked at him, except to wonder why he was there. After 30 minutes, the receptionist's phone buzzed. She listened, then looked at Luca with something close to pity. "Ms. Klein will give you 5 minutes." She led him through a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. At the end, double doors opened into a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. The view was so clear it didn't look real. Vanessa Klein sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Luca's car. She was wearing a gray suit, her hair pulled back, no jewelry except small diamond earrings. She looked exactly like she had at Giordano's sharp, expensive, untouchable. She didn't stand up. "You have 5 minutes." Luca closed the door behind him. "You need a husband." Her eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me? Your board wants you married. Soften your image. Prove you're stable." "I read the article." "And you thought you'd volunteer?" Her voice was ice. "The dishwasher who got fired because his daughter threw water at me? This should be entertaining. Go ahead." Luca stayed standing. "I need money for my daughter's medical bills. You need someone for appearances. $250,000. I'll pretend to be your husband for 1 year. You get your board off your back. I get Sophia on the transplant list." For 3 seconds she didn't move. Then she laughed. It was the cruelest sound Luca had ever heard. Sharp and cold and utterly without humor. "You're serious?" "Yes." "You actually think I'd pay a dishwasher $250,000 to play husband?" She stood up, walked to the window. "A model. Someone who wouldn't humiliate me at every public event. An actor would want more money once he realized how desperate you are." She turned. Her face went very still. Luca kept his voice level. "A model would sell the story the second it's profitable. I just want my daughter to live. That makes me controllable. That's what you actually need." The office was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Outside the window, the city stretched out in all directions, steel and glass, and people who had no idea what happened in rooms like this. "You didn't call security when I said I had information. You called me up here." "I called you up here to have you removed in person." "But you haven't done it yet." Her hand moved toward the phone on her desk, then stopped. "You have no idea what you're asking for." "I know exactly what I'm asking for." "Do you?" "You'd have to live with me. Attend events. Convince people who make a living reading deception that we're real." "I can do that." "You're a dishwasher. I'm a father who needs money. That's all you need to know." She stared at him for a long time, her eyes cold gray, like lake water in winter. "Get out of my office." Luca walked to the door. He put his hand on the handle, then turned back. "Your board gave you a deadline. You're running out of time." "So am I." He left. The receptionist watched him walk past without a word. He took the stairs back down, walked out through the lobby, and stood on Michigan Avenue in the November wind. His suit jacket wasn't warm enough. He'd spent his last $40 on the neighbor who was watching Sophia. He'd failed. The idea had been insane anyway. Desperate. The kind of thing people thought about in hospital rooms at 3 in the morning and then dismissed in daylight. Luca took the Red Line home. 3 days passed. He found a night shift stocking shelves at a grocery store. It paid $11 an hour. He did the math in his head while he unpacked boxes of cereal. $47,000 at $11 an hour, minus taxes, came out to roughly 9 years if he never spent $1 on rent or food. Sophia asked him once why he looked so tired. He said he was fine. On the third night, someone knocked on his apartment door at 8:30. Luca looked through the peephole and saw a woman he didn't recognize. She was older, maybe 60, wearing an expensive coat and holding a leather folder. He opened the door. "Luca Moretti?" "Yes." "My name is Margaret Chen. I'm an attorney for Vanessa Klein." She held out the folder. "Ms. Klein has asked me to deliver this." Luca took it. Inside was a contract, 30 pages long, printed on heavy paper. Margaret's expression was unreadable. "Ms. Klein requires your answer within 24 hours. If you decline, destroy the document." "What are the terms?" "Read it." She handed him a business card. "The arrangement requires cohabitation. Ms. Klein's household staff, driver, and building security cannot know the marriage is fabricated or the illusion fails. The master bedroom has been prepared with separate sleeping arrangements." Luca looked down at the contract in his hands. Margaret's voice softened slightly. "Mr. Moretti, I've worked for the Klein family for 30 years. I'm telling you this as someone who's seen a lot of contracts. Read every word before you sign." Luca closed the door and sat down at the kitchen table. The contract was dense with legal language he barely understood, but certain phrases stood out. $250,000, paid in installments, duration of 12 months, immediate termination clause if either party discloses the arrangement, cohabitation required to maintain credibility. On page 28, there was a section on living arrangements, separate sleeping spaces within the master bedroom. Sophia permitted to visit on weekends only. Luca read it twice. Then he found a pen, turned to the final page, and signed his name next to the line marked Contractor. His hand was shaking when he put the pen down. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a building that didn't have numbers on the elevator buttons, just letters. Luca carried his duffel bag in one hand and Sophia's backpack in the other. Sophia held her stuffed rabbit, the one with the missing ear, and stared at everything like she'd walked into a museum. The door opened into an entrance hall with marble floors and a chandelier that looked like it cost more than 3 years of Luca's rent. The walls were white. The furniture was white. Everything gleamed under recessed lighting that had no visible source. Vanessa stood in the center of the hall wearing different clothes than she'd had on at the office. Black pants, a white sweater, bare feet, her hair was down. She looked younger without the armor of a suit, but no less guarded. "This way," she said. She led them through a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. The city spread out below them, thousands of lights against the November dark. Sophia pressed her face to the glass. "We're so high up." 42 floors, Vanessa said. "What if there's a fire?" "There won't be." "But what if?" Vanessa's jaw tightened slightly. "There are emergency exits. You're safe." She continued the tour. A kitchen with appliances Luca didn't recognize. A dining room with a table that could seat 12. A library with built-in shelves and leather chairs that looked like no one had ever sat in them. 3 guest bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. An office with 2 desks and a view of Michigan Avenue. "You can work from here if you need to," Vanessa said. Sophia tugged on Luca's sleeve. "Where do we sleep?" Vanessa walked down a hallway to a set of double doors at the end. She opened them without ceremony. The master bedroom was bigger than Luca's entire apartment. A California king bed dominated the center of the room, positioned to face the windows. And down the middle of the bed, floor to ceiling, someone had installed a privacy screen. It was made of frosted glass in a black metal frame, perfectly vertical, splitting the space in 2. On one side, the bed was made with white linens and grey pillows. On the other side, a chaise lounge sat against the wall with sheets and a blanket folded at the foot. Sophia walked straight to the bed and climbed on. She flopped onto her back in the middle, arms spread wide, and started giggling. "It's huge. You could fit like 6 people in here." Vanessa's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "We're not. This is a professional arrangement. There are separate spaces, boundaries." Sophia rolled over and looked at her. "But you're sharing a bed." "No, the..." She looked at Luca across the privacy screen, and, for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain, like she'd just realized that the arrangement she'd designed for total control had an intimacy she hadn't accounted for. Luca met her eyes. He didn't say anything. Vanessa cleared her throat. "Your daughter can visit on weekends only. The contract specifies supervised visits. During the week, you'll attend events with me as needed. The rest of the time, we stay out of each other's way. Understood?" "Understood. Don't leave personal items in common areas. There's a second bathroom through that door." She pointed to a door on Luca's side of the room. "Use that one. I use the ensuite." Sophia was still on the bed, running her hand over the comforter. "This is softer than anything." "Sophia, get down," Luca said quietly. She slid off the bed and came to stand beside him. Vanessa looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable crossing her face. "I'll leave you to get settled," Vanessa said. She walked out and closed the doors behind her. The room. Luca set down the duffel bag and Sophia's backpack. Through the windows, the city lights stretched out endlessly, cold and bright. Sophia whispered, "Daddy, why is there a wall in the bed?" "So we each have our own space." "But you're married now. It's complicated." "Do you like her?" Luca looked down at his daughter. She was watching him with those dark eyes that saw too much, that cut through every lie he'd ever tried to tell. "I don't know her," he said. "She seems sad." "Maybe. Are you sad?" He knelt down so they were eye level. "I'm..." She hugged her rabbit tighter. "It's really big here." "Yeah. I miss our apartment." "I know." She looked around the room, at the expensive furniture and the view that cost more per month than most people made in a year. "Can we go home on the weekend? We'll see." He got her ready for bed in the bathroom on his side of the screen. It had heated floors and a rainfall shower and towels so thick they felt like blankets. Sophia brushed her teeth and put on her pajamas, the ones with the stars that were getting too small. Luca walked her back out to the bed. She climbed under the covers on Vanessa's side because that's where she'd been sitting, and he didn't have the heart to move her. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" "Of course." He sat on the edge of the bed. Sophia curled on her side, the rabbit tucked under her chin. Her breathing slowed. 5 minutes later, she was asleep. Luca stood carefully and moved her to the center of the bed, away from the edge. Then he walked to his side of the room, past the privacy screen, and looked at the chaise lounge where he'd be sleeping for the next year. It was 7 feet long. He sat down and took off his shoes. The penthouse was quiet in the way expensive places are quiet. No street noise, no neighbors, just the whisper of climate-controlled air. He could hear his own breathing. At 11 o'clock, light appeared under the double doors. Footsteps in the hallway. The doors opened. Vanessa came in wearing pajamas gray silk, perfectly pressed. She stopped when she saw Sophia asleep in the middle of the bed. "She's on my side." "I'll move her," Luca said quietly. "Don't wake her up." Luca heard water running. She came back out 5 minutes later, face washed, hair braided. She looked at Sophia again, then at Luca. "She needs to go home tomorrow." "The contract says weekends." This isn't a weekend. It's Thursday night. I'll take her back Friday after school. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She climbed into bed on her side of the privacy screen, careful not to disturb Sophia. The girl was small enough that even in the center there was room on both sides. Luca lay down on the chaise lounge. It was too short and too firm. The lights went out. In the darkness he could hear Vanessa's breathing on the other side of the screen, measured, controlled. Then the glow of her phone lit up the frosted glass. He could see her silhouette, sitting up, typing. The typing went on for 20 minutes. Then it stopped. In the silence that followed, Luca heard something else. Quiet. Careful. The sound of someone trying very hard not to cry. He didn't move, didn't speak. On the other side of the screen, Vanessa Klein wept in the dark like she was rationing her own grief, and Luca Moretti lay on a 7-foot chaise in a room that cost more than he'd make in a lifetime, and wondered what kind of loneliness it took to build a fortress this perfect. The first month passed in careful choreography. Luca learned Vanessa's schedule the way a sailor learns tides. She left the penthouse at 6 every morning, returned between 9 and midnight, worked through weekends unless there was an event. She ate lunch at her desk. Dinner came from takeout containers she ate standing at the kitchen counter. She slept in a different bedroom almost every night, rotating through the guest rooms like she was looking for one that felt like home. The board dinner was on a Tuesday. Vanessa had laid out a suit for Luca. Charcoal gray, tailored, expensive. It fit perfectly because she'd sent someone to measure him while he slept. The dinner was at a private club downtown with wood-paneled walls and oil paintings of dead men. 12 people sat around a table that could have seated 20. Vanessa introduced. No one asked how they met. No one asked what he did. They looked at him the way people look at furniture. Present, decorative, beneath conversation. A woman in her 60s asked Vanessa about the Harmon acquisition. Vanessa answered while cutting her steak. The conversation moved through mergers and market projections and names Luca didn't recognize. He sat quietly and ate food that tasted like it cost more than his weekly grocery budget. Halfway through the meal, a man across the table finally looked at Luca. "And what do you do?" Vanessa's fork paused. "Luca consults on community development projects." "Interesting. Which sector?" "Urban renewal," Vanessa said smoothly. "Underserved markets." The man nodded like that explained everything and went back to his conversation. Luca said nothing. That was the arrangement. He was there to exist, not to speak. The charity auction on Saturday was worse. A hotel ballroom full of people bidding thousands of dollars on golf weekends and wine collections. Donors kept approaching Vanessa, and each one asked Luca the same question with different words. "What do you do? Where are you from?" Vanessa answered every time. Luca stood beside her and smiled when expected. By the third week, he understood. This was her life. Performing, managing perception, never letting anyone close enough to see what was underneath. Sophia came on weekends. Vanessa tried to avoid her at first. Stayed in her office, claimed she had calls to make. But Sophia was 7 and fearless and had no concept of professional boundaries. The second Saturday, Sophia found Vanessa in the library and climbed into the chair across from her. "Why don't you have any friends?" "People you talk to who aren't for work." "I have colleagues. That's not the same." Vanessa's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "I'm busy, Sophia. I don't have time for friends." "Everyone has time for friends. Adults are different. Do you ever have fun?" The question landed like a punch. Vanessa stared at this small girl with dark curls and a purple medical bracelet, and for the first time since Luca had met her, she looked genuinely lost. "I don't know," Vanessa said quietly. Sophia tilted her head. "That's sad." She climbed down from the chair and left. Vanessa sat very still for a long time after. On Sunday afternoon, Sophia was drawing at the kitchen table. Luca was making grilled cheese sandwiches, the one thing the expensive kitchen was equipped for that he actually knew how to cook. Sophia had her markers spread across the granite counter, working on something with intense concentration. Vanessa came in to get coffee. She glanced at Sophia's drawing and stopped. It was a picture of three people: a tall man with dark hair, a small girl with curls, and a woman with her hair pulled back standing between them. Above the drawing, in uneven letters, Sophia had written, "My family." Vanessa stood there holding her empty coffee mug. She didn't move, didn't speak. Sophia looked up. "Do you like it? Why did you draw me?" "Because you're here." "I'm not. We're not actually." Sophia went back to coloring. "You live here. Daddy lives here. I visit here. That's a family." Vanessa's throat worked. She set down the mug, took the drawing carefully by the edges, and walked to the refrigerator. She used a magnet. She just stood there looking at it. At night, the privacy screen became something neither of them had planned for. Luca would lie on the chaise lounge that was still too short, and Vanessa would lie on her side of the bed. And in the darkness they couldn't see each other, only the frosted glass between them glowing slightly from the city lights outside. It made talking easier, like confessing to a priest you couldn't see. 2 weeks in, Vanessa's voice came through the dark. "Why do you work so hard for her?" Luca stared at the ceiling. "She's my daughter." "Found a way to make peace with the odds. Would you?" Silence. Then, no. Luca turned on his side to face the screen. He could see her silhouette sitting up, knees pulled to her chest. "Sophia's all I have left of someone I loved, our mother." "Yeah." "What happened?" The question sat between them. Luca hadn't talked about Gianna in 8 years, not to anyone. But something about the darkness and the distance made it possible. "Car accident. She was 8 months pregnant. Drunk driver ran a red light." Vanessa's breath caught. But her heart was damaged from the trauma. "The doctors said she might live to 10 if we were lucky." "How old is she now?" 7.5. The silence stretched. Outside the windows, the city hummed with distant traffic and lives being lived in buildings full of light. "You gave up everything for her," Vanessa said. "It wasn't a question. I gave up a job. She's my daughter." "What job?" Luca almost told her. The words were right there. But 8 years of silence was a hard habit to break. "It doesn't matter now." Then Vanessa said, so quietly he almost missed it, "I don't know how to do what you do." "What?" "Love someone enough to give up everything." Luca looked at her shadow on the screen. "Yes, you do." "No. I've spent my whole life building walls. I don't know how to let anyone in." "You let Sophia draw your picture." "That's different. She's a child. She's a person who sees you," Luca said. "Maybe that's what you're afraid of." Vanessa didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. They lay there in the dark on opposite sides of the screen, two people who'd started as strangers in a transaction, and Luca realized that the most dangerous thing about pretending to be married wasn't the lie. It was how easy it was becoming to forget they were lying. 6 weeks into the arrangement, Vanessa came home with an envelope and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We have an event Saturday," she said. "Charity gala. Boxing matches." Luca was at the kitchen counter making dinner. Sophia was at the table doing math homework. What kind of boxing? Donors pay to watch people embarrass themselves for a good cause. She set the envelope down. "Brett will be there." Luca's hands stilled on the cutting board. He'd read the name Brett Castellano in enough of Vanessa's discarded files to know exactly who he was. her ex-fiancé, still on her board. The man who'd orchestrated the hostile takeover that destroyed a family business and tanked Summit's reputation. The man who'd positioned himself as her loudest critic while smiling for the cameras. Do I need to know anything about him? The gala was at the Palmer House, a hotel ballroom with crystal chandeliers and tables set for 400. The pre-event dinner was in a smaller room off the main hall. Vanessa wore a black dress that probably cost more than Luca used to make in a month. He wore another suit she'd had tailored for him. Brett Castellano was already there when they arrived. Late 30s, expensive haircut, the kind of confident posture that came from never being told no. He was holding court at the bar, surrounded by 3 men in tuxedos who laughed at everything he said. He saw Vanessa and his smile sharpened. There she is, Chicago's most eligible CEO. His eyes slid to Luca. Oh, wait, not eligible anymore. Vanessa's grip tightened on Luca's arm. Brett, Vanessa. He walked over, hand extended to Luca. Brett Castellano, we haven't been formally introduced. Luca shook his hand. The grip was too firm, too long. A dominance play dressed up as manners. Luca Moretti. So I've heard. Quite the whirlwind romance. Brett's smile widened. What is it you do again? Community development. Fascinating. Which projects? Actually, I wanted to talk to Luca about the gala. We're still looking for volunteers for the boxing matches. Brett turned to him. Ever boxed before? No. Pity. It's for charity, you know. Donors love seeing people step outside their comfort zone. His voice carried across the room now, drawing attention. I'm sparring in the main event. 3 rounds. We're short. A few participants, though. I'd love to see Vanessa's husband get in the ring. Show everyone he has, skills beyond. What was it? Community development. The room had gone. Luca felt Vanessa's hand tighten on his arm. A warning. Brett's smile was all teeth. Unless you're just another man living off Vanessa's money, in which case, I understand. Some people are more comfortable in the background. Sophia was 3 tables away, sitting with a donor's daughter. She'd been coloring, but now she was watching. She'd heard everything. Luca could see it in her face, the way her shoulders had gone small, the way her fingers gripped her purple bracelet. She'd heard men dismiss her father before, at Giordano's. She'd watched him shrink year after year, taking jobs that paid nothing because they let him be there for her doctor's appointments. And now she was watching it happen again. Sophia stood up. She walked over to Luca and took his hand. Her palm was small and warm against his. Daddy, she said quietly, don't let him be mean to her like he was mean to you. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Luca looked down at his daughter, 7 years old, a heart that might give out before she turned 10. And she was standing. Luca. 3 rounds, Luca said. Brett's eyebrows lifted. You sure? It's been known to get a little rough. I'm sure. The dinner ended an hour later. Luca and Vanessa rode home in silence. Sophia fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Vanessa's driver took them in. When they got to the penthouse, Luca carried Sophia to bed and came back out to find Vanessa standing in the living room, still in her dress, staring out at the city lights. You don't have to do this, she said without turning around. I know, it's a trap. He wants to humiliate us both. Luca didn't have words for what Sophia's question had done to him. How it felt to realize his daughter had been watching him disappear for 8 years and was begging him to come back. Because she asked me to, he said quietly. Vanessa finally turned. Her expression was unreadable. You've never boxed? No. Then you're going to get hurt. Probably. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she walked to her office and came back with a business card. There's a gym in the building. Residents only. 37th floor. That night, Luca went treadmills, weight machines, a mirrored wall, and in the corner, a heavy bag hanging from a ceiling mount. He stood in front of it for a full minute. Then he threw a punch. His form was wrong, rusty. His shoulder torque was off, and his follow-through was sloppy. But underneath the rust, something remembered. His body knew these movements the way it knew breathing. He hit the bag again. Harder. The door opened behind him. Vanessa stood in the doorway wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back. She'd never looked more like a person and less like a CEO. Luca's knuckles were already starting to ache. A long time ago. How long? 8 years. She walked closer. Her eyes moved to his hands. He hadn't bothered with wraps, and his knuckles were red where the scar tissue had split. She reached out and took his hand, turning it over to examine the scars more closely. "These aren't from construction work," she said quietly. "No." "What are they from?" Luca pulled his hand back. "Does it matter? You're going to fight my ex-fiancé in front of 400 people. Yes, it matters. I can handle myself." That really looked at her. 6 weeks of living together, and she was still a stranger in most of the ways that mattered. But she was also the woman who'd hung Sophia's drawing on the refrigerator. The woman who'd stopped sleeping in different bedrooms and now slept on her side of the privacy screen every night because Sophia had asked her where she was. "I used to box," he said. "That's all you need to know." Vanessa held his gaze. "Why did you stop?" "Because I had something more important to fight for." She didn't ask what. Maybe she already knew. She turned and walked to a storage closet, came back with hand wraps and training gloves. "You're doing it wrong." "What?" "Your stance, your rotation, everything." She held out the wraps. "If you're going to do this, at least don't embarrass yourself." For the next 3 nights, Vanessa came to the gym and watched him train. She didn't give advice. She didn't need advice. She didn't know boxing. But she watched the way his body moved. The way muscle memory surfaced through years of neglect. The way his hands knew where to go even when his mind had forgotten. On the 3rd night, she said, "You were good." Luca was wrapping his hands for another round. "How do you know?" "Because your body remembers things your mouth won't say." He met her eyes in the mirror. "Does that bother you? That you have secrets?" She was quiet for a moment. "No, everyone has secrets. I'm just wondering when you'll trust me enough to tell me yours." Luca turned to face her. "You first." Something passed between them. An understanding. A challenge. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her expression hardened. "It's Brett. He sent out a press release about the gala. Your name's in it. He's promoting the match. Let him." "Luca," I said, "let him." She searched his face. Whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. "Okay, but if this goes wrong." "It won't." Vanessa left the gym. Luca stayed. He hit the bag until his knuckles bled and his shoulders burned, and the ghost of who he used to be started to feel less like a ghost and more like a man who'd been waiting 8 years for permission to stop hiding. The Palmer House ballroom had been transformed. A regulation boxing ring stood in the center, spotlights mounted. 400 donors in black tie filled the round tables circling it. Champagne flutes caught the light. The air smelled like expensive perfume and anticipation. Luca stood in a makeshift locker room off the main hall. Someone had found him gear. Headgear, gloves, shorts that didn't quite fit. His hands shook as he wrapped them. Not from fear. From memory. Vanessa appeared in the doorway. She'd changed into a different dress, something dark and elegant. Her face was carefully neutral. "You don't have to do this. We've had this conversation. Brett fights dirty. Always has." "I know." "Then why?" "Because Sophia asked me to." Vanessa's jaw tightened. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but a volunteer stuck his head in and said they were ready. The walk to the ring felt longer than it was. Luca climbed through the ropes. The canvas was white. The lights were hot. 400 faces watched him from the darkness beyond the ring. Brett was already there, bouncing on his toes, playing to the crowd. He raised his gloves and the donors applauded. He looked good fit. This wasn't his first charity match. The referee called them to center ring. Brett's smile was all teeth. "Last chance to back out," he said quietly. Luca didn't answer. The bell rang. Brett came out fast. He wanted to overwhelm, to make this quick and humiliating. Luca moved backward, hands up, absorbing pressure. His footwork was sloppy, his timing was off. Brett landed a jab that snapped his head back, then another. The crowd noise shifted, anticipation turning to certainty. This was going exactly how Brett had planned. His mouth was close to Luca's ear. "Gold digger," he whispered. The referee broke them apart. Brett grinned and went back to work. He landed a combination that pushed Luca into the ropes. The round was nearly over. Brett was winning cleanly. Then Brett dropped his right hand half an inch too low and threw an elbow during the next clinch. Not hard enough for the referee to see, just enough to make a point. The bell rang. Round 1 over. Luca walked back to his corner. The volunteer who'd been assigned to him offered water. Luca waved it away. He could hear Brett across the ring, laughing with his corner, already celebrating. Sophia was at a table near the VIP section. She was watching with wide eyes, her purple bracelet visible even from the ring. The bell for round 2 rang. Brett came out the same way, aggressive, confident. But this time, when he threw his jab, Luca wasn't there. He'd slipped left, inside the line, and Brett's momentum carried him forward into empty air. Luca's counter was short and precise. A right hand to the body that folded Brett slightly. Luca slipped the first punch, parried the second, and countered with a left hook that caught Brett on the temple. Not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to send a message. The crowd noise changed. Confusion rippling through the tables. Brett's smile was gone. He came forward more carefully now, setting his feet, measuring distance. He threw a jab. Luca moved his head 2 inches and the punch whispered past. He threw a cross. Luca ducked under it and stepped to the side, making Brett reset again. It was a language Luca's body had spoken fluently for years. The way you made someone reach just far enough that they were off balance when you countered. Brett threw a hook. Luca caught it on his shoulder and stepped in with a 3-punch combination jab to the sternum. Cross to the chin, hook to the ribs. That landed so fast and so clean that Brett's guard came apart. Luca stepped back, gave him room to recover. Brett's breathing had changed. His eyes were different now. This wasn't a charity match anymore. He rushed forward, throwing harder, trying to use size and aggression to overwhelm. Luca moved like water around stone. Every punch Brett threw hit air or gloves. Every time Brett extended, Luca was already somewhere else. 40 seconds left in the round. Brett was tired now. His punches were slower. His footwork was heavy. Luca threw a jab that stopped Brett's forward momentum, then a straight right that snapped his head back. Then a left hook that came from an angle Brett didn't see until it was too late. Brett's knees buckled. He went down. The referee started counting. Brett got to one knee at 6, waved off the count at 8. The referee checked his eyes, asked if he wanted to continue. Round over. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Luca walked back to his corner. He could hear murmuring starting now, spreading through the tables like fire. In the front row, an older man in his 60s pulled out his phone. He was scrolling through something, eyes moving between the screen and the ring. His face went pale. He leaned to the woman beside him and whispered something. She looked up at Luca. Her hand went to her mouth. The man stood up. His voice carried in the silence. That's the silence. More phones came. Someone at a back table said, Thomas Moretti. Someone else said, he's supposed to be dead. The man in the front row was holding up his phone now, comparing old footage to what he'd just watched. His voice was loud enough for half the room to hear. That's Thomas, the Silence Moretti, IBF light heavyweight champion 2007 to 2010. He disappeared 8 years ago. Phones were everywhere now. The ballroom filled with the sound of whispered recognition, camera clicks, the glow of screens. Vanessa sat frozen in the VIP section. The referee called time for round 3, but Brett waved him off. He took out his mouthguard. We're done. He left the ring without looking at Luca. Luca stood alone under the lights. 400 people stared at him. Phones recorded him. Somewhere in the crowd, someone said the name, The Silence, again, and it echoed. He climbed out of the ring and walked toward the locker room. The crowd parted. No one spoke to him. They just watched. He'd made it halfway across the ballroom when the older man from the front row stepped in front of him. He'd covered Luca's last 3 title defenses. You're Thomas Moretti, Ray said. It wasn't a question. Luca didn't answer. You were the Silence, 3-time IBF champion. You walked away in 2010 after your wife died. Ray's voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. Where the hell have you been for 8 years? Luca met his eyes. He could lie. He could walk away. He could do what he'd done for 8 years and disappear. But 400 phones were recording. The footage was already uploading. By morning, his name would be everywhere. Then he walked past Ray Castellano, through the ballroom, and out into the hallway where Vanessa was waiting with an expression he'd never seen before. Not anger, not fear, but something close to awe. "Who are you?" she whispered, and Luca realized that for the first time in 8 years, he was about to have to answer that question honestly. Vanessa's phone rang at 6:30 the next morning. Luca was already awake on the chaise lounge. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces in the ballroom, the phones recording, Ray Castellano's voice saying his real name out loud for the first time in 8 years. Vanessa answered the call. Her voice was clipped, professional. When? A pause. I'll be there in an hour. She hung up and looked at Luca across the privacy screen. Emergency board meeting. 9 a.m. Brett filed a formal complaint. What kind of complaint? That I married a man under false pretenses, that you're potentially a con artist using a fake identity. If it's true, it's grounds for termination under my CEO contract's morality clause. Luca sat up. What do you need me to do? Nothing. Your contract doesn't require you to testify at board meetings. The year isn't up. You can walk away with partial payment. I'm not walking away. Luca, I'm not walking away from this. She stared at him. Then she nodded once and went to get dressed. The Summit Growth Partners boardroom was on the 22nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake. A mahogany. Every seat was filled, except Vanessa's and one empty chair clearly meant for Luca. Brett sat at the far end. He'd changed out of last night's tuxedo into a sharp gray suit. His face was bruised along the left temple where Luca's hook had landed. Vanessa sat at the head of the table. Luca took the empty chair beside her. The board chairman was a man in his 70s named Harold Kemp. He'd made his fortune in manufacturing and had the kind of voice that carried authority without volume. Ms. Klein, Mr. Moretti, thank you for coming on short notice. Mr. Moretti, Castellano has raised concerns that require immediate attention. Brett leaned forward. I've compiled evidence that Luca Moretti is not who he claims to be, that Vanessa entered this marriage without proper vetting, that she may have compromised this company's integrity. He slid a folder across the table. Harold opened it and read silently. According to public records, Brett said, Luca Moretti has no documented history before 8 years ago, no credit history, no tax filings under that name, no employment records. He appeared out of nowhere, and now we know why. He was living under an assumed identity. One of the board members, a woman named Patricia Lee, looked at Luca. Is this true? Luca kept his voice level. Luca Moretti is my legal name. I changed it 8 years ago. From what? Thomas Moretti. Brett's smile was sharp. And why would you need to change your name? Because my wife died and I needed to start over. Or because you had something to hide. Harold raised his hand. Mr. Castellano, let him speak. He turned to Luke. 12 faces watching him. 12 people who'd spent their lives in boardrooms making decisions about other people's futures. He'd spent 3 years in a ring where one mistake meant unconsciousness. This should have felt easier. It didn't. I wasn't hiding from the law, Luca said. I was hiding from the person I used to be. Which was? Thomas, the silence. Moretti IBF light heavyweight champion 2007 to 2010. The room went very quiet. Patricia Lee pulled out her phone, typed something, went pale. She turned the phone to show Harold. Yes. And you walked away. Yes. Brett leaned back in his chair. So you lied about your identity to marry Vanessa. That's still fraud. I didn't lie. I legally changed my name 8 years ago. Every document I signed for Ms. Klein used my legal name. But you withheld information about your past. My past wasn't relevant to our arrangement. Your past is a champion athlete who made millions. That's extremely relevant when you're claiming to need money for medical bills. Luca's hands tightened on the armrests. I spent $2 million of it on my wife's medical care. The rest went to establishing a trust for my daughter that I can't access without breaking the terms my wife set before she died. The silence stretched. Harold's voice was gentle. Tell us what happened. Luca looked at Vanessa. She nodded once. My wife Gianna was 8 months pregnant when a drunk driver ran a red light. She died in the ambulance. Sophia survived emergency C-section, but her heart was damaged from the trauma. I had one fight left on my contract. I won it. Then I changed my name and because I couldn't stand in front of crowds anymore. His voice stayed quiet, steady. I couldn't let people cheer for me when I'd failed to protect the only thing that mattered. I took my daughter, and I worked jobs where no one asked my name. Dishwasher, warehouse loader, construction cleanup. Anything that let me be there for every doctor's appointment, anything that let me be there for every doctor's appointment, every hospital visit, every 3 a.m. scare when her heart did something it wasn't supposed to. Patricia Lee's eyes were bright. Brett's jaw was tight. That's a You're asking us to believe you gave up millions to raise your daughter, then coincidentally married one of Chicago's wealthiest CEOs. I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm telling you what happened. And we're supposed to take your word for it. Luca reached into the folder he'd brought and pulled out a bound document, 40 pages. He slid it across the table to Harold. What's this? Harold asked. A community investment strategy for Summit Growth Partners. I've been reading Ms. Klein's files for 2 months. I've seen the deals she wants to make and the deals her board forces her to make. Your bleeding reputation because you extract value from communities instead of building it. This plan changes that. Harold opened the document. His eyebrows rose. He passed it to Patricia Lee. She read the first page, then the second, then looked at Luca like she was seeing him for the first time. This is sophisticated work, she said quietly. It's built from Ms. Klein's ideas. I just organized them and added implementation structure. Brett stood up. This is absurd. He's trying to buy his way. He was reading page 3 now, making notes in the margin. Mr. Moretti, this model would require significant capital reallocation. Yes, sir. And it would probably cut our quarterly returns by 15% for the first 2 years. Yes, sir. But in year 3, Harold looked up. In year 3, this could triple our portfolio value while actually helping the communities we invest in. Patricia Lee was on page 8. This is brilliant. Brett's face had gone red. You're seriously considering business advice from a dishwasher. Vanessa's voice cut through. He's not a dishwasher. He's a man who sacrificed a world championship to raise his daughter alone. He's someone who spent 2 months studying my work closely enough to see what I was trying to build before you and the rest of this board blocked it. And he's my husband. The last word landed with weight. Harold closed the document. He looked at Brett. Mr. Castellano, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer. Did you challenge Mr. Moretti to that boxing match because you genuinely thought he was a fraud, or because you wanted to humiliate Ms. Klein? Brett's mouth opened. I'll take that as confirmation. Harold stood. This board will vote on 2 motions. First, whether Ms. Klein's marriage to Mr. Moretti constitutes grounds for termination. Second, whether Mr. Castellano's position on this board is tenable given his obvious conflict of interest. The vote took 3 minutes. Vanessa kept her position. 11-1. Brett was removed from the board. Deaden 2. Harold shook Luca's hand on the way out. That community investment plan, I'd like to discuss implementation. Vanessa met Luca's eyes across the table. Yes, he is. They left the boardroom together. Brett was still sitting at the far end of the table, alone, staring at nothing. In the elevator down, Vanessa finally spoke. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. The business plan. You've been working on it for weeks. I told you. I wanted to understand your world. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. They walked out into the November cold. Vanessa's driver was waiting at the curb. She stopped before getting in the car. Thomas Moretti. That's who I've been for 8 years. And who were you before? Luca looked at her. At this woman who'd been a stranger 3 months ago, who'd humiliated him in a restaurant kitchen, who'd offered him $250,000 to pretend to be her husband, who'd let his daughter draw her into a picture labeled My Family, and hung it on the refrigerator like it meant something. I was someone who thought strength meant never losing, he said quietly. Now I'm someone who knows it means keeping going after you do. Vanessa held his gaze. Then she got in the car. Luca watched it drive away and realized that somewhere in the last 3 months, the woman who'd hired him to be controllable had become the person he most wanted to be honest with. 3 weeks before the contract expired, neither of them said a word about it. Luca worked as a consultant from Vanessa's office in the penthouse. She rebuilt Summit's reputation 1 community investment at a time. Sophia visited every weekend and sometimes stayed weeknights when Luca had late meetings. The privacy screen was still there, dividing the bed down the middle, but nobody talked about what would happen on day 366 when the marriage ended automatically, unless both parties agreed to renegotiate. Dr. Patel called on a Tuesday afternoon. Luca was reviewing projected returns on a housing development in Pilsen when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. Then he saw Northwestern Memorial on the caller ID. Mr. Moretti, we have a heart. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. And Luca's hands went. We need, Sophia admitted Thursday night for prep. Friday was 3 days after the contract expired. Luca called Sophia's school and told them she wouldn't be back for a while. He packed her bag with the rabbit that was missing an ear and clean pajamas and the shoebox of Gianna's sketches Sophia kept under her bed. He called Vanessa and told her the news. She said she'd meet him at the hospital. Thursday night, they admitted Sophia to the pediatric wing. She was calm in the way children are calm when they trust the adults around them to handle the scary parts. A nurse came in and explained the procedure. Sophia listened carefully, nodded, asked if she could bring her rabbit into surgery. The nurse smiled. "He'll be waiting for you when you wake up." Luca sat beside Sophia's bed. Vanessa stood near the window. Neither of them had mentioned that in 72 hours the contract would dissolve and Vanessa would have no legal reason to be here. Sophia looked at both of them. "Are you staying?" "Of course," Luca said. Sophia's eyes moved to Vanessa. "Both of you?" Vanessa's throat worked. "Yes." "The whole time?" "The whole time." Sophia smiled. They took her into surgery at 6 the next morning. The anesthesiologist was a woman with kind eyes who told Sophia she'd be asleep before she could count to 10. Sophia made it to 7. The waiting room had green chairs and fluorescent lights and windows that looked out at the parking garage. Luca sat. Vanessa stood. Hours passed. At 9 a.m., a nurse brought coffee. Neither of them drank. At noon, a doctor came out and said everything was progressing normally. At 2 p.m., Luca's hands started shaking and wouldn't stop. Vanessa sat close enough that their shoulders touched. "She's going to be okay," Vanessa said quietly. "You don't know that. I know her. She's stronger than both of us." Luca's jaw tightened. He'd spent 8 years preparing for Sophia to die. He didn't know how to prepare for her to live. At 3:15 p.m., the surgical team emerged. Dr. Patel pulled down her mask and smiled. "The transplant was successful. She's in recovery." Luca stood so fast the chair scraped backward. "Can I see her?" "Give us 30 minutes to get her settled." "Then yes." The 30 minutes felt like... When they finally let him into recovery, Sophia was small against the white sheets. Tubes and monitors surrounded her. A long incision ran down the center of her chest, covered in surgical dressing. But she was breathing. Her chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. Luca sat beside her and took her hand. It was warm. Vanessa stood in the doorway, not coming in, not leaving. Luca looked back at her. "She's okay," he said. His voice broke on the last word. 8 years of carrying weight he couldn't put down. And it all came apart at once. He bent forward. She knelt beside his chair. Her hand found his shoulder. "She's okay," she said again. Luca turned, and Vanessa's arms were there. They'd never touched like this. Not without an audience, not without a camera or a donor or a board member watching. Just two people who'd started as strangers in a transaction and become something neither of them had words for. He held on to her, and she held on to him, and Sophia slept between them with someone else's heart beating in her chest. 3 days later, Sophia was moved to a regular room. The doctor said recovery looked good. Luca sat with her every day, reading books and helping with the homework her teacher sent. Vanessa came after work, bringing dinner they ate on the fold-out chairs. On day 366, the contract expired. Neither of them signed the dissolution paperwork, not he said anything about it. 1 year later, Luca stood in the corner of a community gym in Pilsen, watching 2 teenagers spar. The gym was Summit Growth Partners' first project under the new community investment model. They'd renovated an abandoned warehouse, hired local coaches, and offered free programs to kids who needed somewhere to go after school. Luca taught boxing 3 nights a week, not how to hurt people, how to move, how to breathe, how to stay standing when everything in you wanted to fall. Sophia sat ringside doing her math homework. She was 8 now, taller, stronger. The scar down her chest was visible when she wore tank tops. She decorated it with temporary tattoos the same way she used to decorate her medical alert bracelet. Today it was covered in stars. The front door opened and Vanessa walked in. She'd come straight from the office. Suit, heels, the armor she wore when she had to be CEO Vanessa Klein. But her shoulders dropped when she saw Sophia, and her face softened in a way it never did in boardrooms. "Hey," Sophia said without looking up from her homework. "Hey yourself. How was school?" "Fine. We're learning fractions." "Do you like fractions?" "They're okay." Sophia finished a problem and looked up. "Are you staying for dinner?" "If you want me to, I want you to." Vanessa set down her briefcase and sat beside Sophia. The girl leaned against her shoulder without asking, the way children do when they've decided someone is safe. Vanessa's Luca watched from across the gym. For 15 years, the image of a child and a woman together had been a knife in his chest. Gianna holding their daughter, the life they should have had, the family that got taken away. But this image didn't hurt. This image was Sophia, laughing at something Vanessa said. Vanessa's hand gentle on Sophia's shoulder. Two people who'd found each other because a desperate man made an impossible proposal and a lonely woman said yes. The teenagers in the ring finished their round. Luca called time, gave them notes, sent them to the heavy bag. He walked over to where Sophia and Vanessa sat. "Dinner?" he asked. "Yes," Sophia said immediately. Vanessa looked up at him. A year ago, she would have checked her phone, made an excuse, claimed she had work to do. Now she just smiled and said, "What are we making?" "Pasta." "I can help," Sophia said. They left the gym together. The November air was cold and smelled like snow. Sophia walked between them, holding both their hands. They took the train back to the penthouse, not because the contract said they had to live there, but because somewhere in the last year it had stopped being Vanessa's space and started being theirs. That night after dinner, after Sophia went to bed, Luca and Vanessa sat in the living room with the city lights spread out below them. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Vanessa's head rested on his shoulder. His arm was around her waist. The privacy screen was still in the bedroom, but they'd stopped using it 6 months ago. "Do you ever think about where we'd be if Sophia hadn't thrown that water?" Vanessa asked quietly. "Sometimes. Where do you think you'd be?" Luca considered. "Probably still washing dishes. Still broke. Still watching my daughter's heart fail and knowing I couldn't stop it. And me? Still alone. Still alone. Still working 18-hour days. Still sleeping in a different room every night because none of them felt like home." Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't think I understood what home meant until a 7-year-old." Luca's arm tightened around her. "She sees things we don't. She sees what's true." Two people who'd made a deal for money and survival and accidentally found something neither of them knew they needed. In the bedroom, Sophia slept with the rabbit tucked under her chin. Her chest rose and fell, steady and strong. A stranger's home. She'd loved him enough to make him promise to keep going. And he had. Through 8 years of grief and fear and invisibility, he'd kept going until a woman who looked like ice said yes to an impossible proposal. Until a contract with an expiration date became a family without one. Strength isn't what you're capable of in the ring. It's what you're willing to risk outside of it. It's standing in front of someone who could destroy you and asking them to save you instead. It's letting a stranger close enough to see the parts of yourself you've spent years hiding. And sometimes, the people we make arrangements with become the only ones who see us clearly. Because they're the ones who chose to stay when the contract said they could leave.